because we do not have a recording secretary here tonight, so it's critical that we get this, are we on? Yeah, critical that we get this taped, so therefore that means any of the board members wishing to speak must utilize these portable microphones that have been placed in front of you. All you need to do is push the button here, and this red circle will turn to green, and then that means the microphone is working. And the same with anyone in the audience, the gallery, wishing to speak would do the same with the portable microphone that's there. Before we launch into tonight's matter, and we only have one on the agenda tonight, I want to take the opportunity to introduce a new member who has been duly appointed and sworn to the board as an alternate, and that's Julia Laments at the end of the table. Julia, we all want to welcome her and thank you very much for agreeing to commit the vast resources of time necessary to serve effectively on this board. We look forward to your commitment and promise we won't choose on you to be a voting member tonight. That having been said, the role of the alternate members is to participate in the discussion, ask all the questions they want. The only thing they cannot do is vote at the end if we are to get to that point. So at this point in time, in order to make sure we have at least 5 voting members, it's up to Peter, Conrad, and Lauren to, you've read the application, let me know if you have any conflicts of interest and can't sit on this. You guys all good? Then which of the 3 of you would care to sit as a voting member on this application?
Don't all raise your hand.
Not all at once, yeah.
I'm fine doing it.
You want to do it? Okay. So Lauren has agreed to be our 5th voting member. That having been said, I think...
So Michael, just for the record, I want to make sure we've got voting Heidi and Michael, Steve, Lauren.
Bingo.
Okay.
Yep. Heidi was instituted as a full-fledged member at the most recent session, so...
Heidi was last year. Steve is our most recent full-fledged member.
Attaboy, Steve, thank you. Oh, and one other thing I want to point out before we launch into this, for all the board, this is essentially for the board members, and I probably should wait until the end, but I'm on a roll, so I'm going to do it anyway. If you all have your new section of your new Bibles, okay, I would direct you, and I won't make you read it now, but I want to call your attention to the very last statute that's section in here, which is 679. In 2020, the legislature created a special board which has concurrent jurisdiction with the Superior Court. Yeah, concurrent jurisdiction with the Superior Court to hear appeals made by local boards, not just zoning boards, but historical district boards, all that sort of thing. And this 679 lays out all the mechanics of that. And I know Stephen has been well aware of this, and he's been reviewing some of the decisions of this board because the natural appeal process from that board is to go to the Supreme Court of New Hampshire, as it would be in the Superior Court. So that's just a little appellate branch that's where the appeals are going. And that we may see some of those printed decisions that pertain to matters that we are adjudicating here. So, could just call your attention to that for future. And now, the main event, which is the Griffith Irrevocable Trust, William S. and William G. Griffith trustees. They are represented tonight by Melissa, who is here, and I want you to, let me just say that I did a tabulation the other day. I've been sitting in this chair for 18 years. I can't believe it. But in that course of time, I've seen a lot of applications. And this one, in particular, strikes me as, I don't want to be pejorative when I say this, but it looks like it might be a little thin. So, what I'm going to say to you, and I'm not going to judge anything. I can only speak for myself. That I hope you have other things to offer us besides what is written on here. Because in a variance proceeding, we are, by statute, required to rule on 5 specific criteria to grant this variance. And the burden is on you, the burden is on you to put forth evidence to this board sufficient for the board to sustain a finding on all 5. You fail on any one, the variance cannot be granted. Now, the evidentiary standard for your burden is very low. It's a preponderance of the evidence. It's more probable than not that what you say is true. And I guess procedurally speaking, we can decide how to do this as a board, okay? Because I don't want to waste anyone's time. We can invite you to make your presentation, and then we will discuss it. And at any time, you may withdraw your application to a date certain, which Adam will give us, and then you can come back and complete the presentation. So it might be beneficial to you, and I think the rest of the board, to participate, listen to what you can present to us, discuss it a little bit, and then if you kind of get the sense it's not going the way you want it, you might want to withdraw the application, get a date certain from Adam, go back home and continue the research and see.
What are your 5 criteria?
The 5 criteria.
So we just need to make sure everything's captured through the microphone up here for the recording.
The question
What are
was.
your 5 criteria?
What are the 5 criteria? They're on the application for the ordinance, and I know a lot of it is legalese. I will try to give it to you in summary form. The first one is that the variance you're seeking will not be contrary to the public interest. Second, that the variance, if we grant the variance, that the spirit of the ordinance will be observed. And the spirit of this ordinance is centered around the issue of density, residential density on a particular commercial lot. I think that's the gravamen of this case, all right? 3, that in granting of the variance, substantial justice will be done, and there's a specific test for that. I have a worksheet on that, because it's a little bit squirrely. And you know, these are all legal concepts that the Supreme Court of New Hampshire has weighed in on and attempted to describe. Substantial justice is done if the benefit to the applicant from granting the variance outweighs the harm to the general public by granting the variance. Or to put it another way, the loss to the applicant by denial of the variance outweighs the gain to the general public by denial of the variance. So that's kind of a squirrely one. I mean, and we have all of the board members wrestle with that one. It's a challenging one. So that's substantial justice. The fourth one is that the values of surrounding property values are not diminished by the granting of the ordinance. And fifth, that the literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship to the applicant. In other words, if we gave them the strict letter of the law and said, we're following the ordinance, if that creates an unnecessary hardship for you, you got to show us that it does. And let me just add to that, if I may, that unnecessary hardship is the most challenging element of all of the 5 for people to present and move forward on. And let me also say this, unnecessary hardship does not mean the economic plight of the owner. It means what are the physical characteristics of the lot and the structure that set it apart from all other similar structures, and that make the enforcement of the ordinance or the application of the ordinance as it's written causes the property owner to be denied reasonable use of their property. Reasonable use is not maximum use. I'm sorry, I'm throwing a lot of case law and a lot of stuff at you, but those are the elements of the variance. And we're welcome to have you, at this time, come to the microphone and proceed with your presentation. And we will, I don't know if it would be rude for the board members to introduce questions during your presentation.
Can we just take 1 second?
You may, yeah, you asked for a second. You may have a second to decide, and we'll stand in recess until you guys are ready to go forward.
I'll make one quick clarification. Wouldn't necessarily be a withdrawal. We could continue without withdrawing, so just want to make that.
Yeah, thank you, Adam.
While they're chatting, I'll share some stuff with the ZBA.
Yeah, for the record then, it would be a continuance of, if you wanted to stop the presentation and come back at a date certain, it would be a continuance, not a withdrawal of the application. Thank you, Adam, I appreciate that.
And just to use our time, so you all will be getting updated copies of the zoning ordinance. We are struggling with a Word document that started in 1998, Microsoft Word, that has officially stopped supporting some of the amendments from earlier versions of Word. And so the likelihood of the entire ordinance having to be rebuilt and reformatted in order to get the table of contents to actually read the section headings is now very strong. Unfortunately, Cara has been working on finalizing the table of contents for several weeks, and it looks like there's not a workaround. So we have a few copies that the table of contents is just wrong in, that we are bringing to meetings in the interim. You'll see that there are spots where it's just will not fill no matter what we do. So I didn't want to print the 40 copies that we need until that's done. So if you need to see updated floodplain regulations or the side yard setbacks in R2 that changed this year, we've got copies up on the stage in here, and we will hopefully have yours soon.
Thank you.
Correct.
Yeah, I would entertain a motion to, while we're waiting, unless you guys ready to make it? Okay, sorry. Come to the microphone, introduce yourself, and tell us what you'd like us to do.
My name is Bill Griffiths.
Is that light on? Push the button so it's green.
Hello?
There you go.
All right.
Thank you.
Sounds the same here. My name is Bill Griffiths. This is my father. And he has been, I'll say that none of us are lawyers here.
Understood.
And we may take you up on the idea of coming back with somebody that can speak more the language.
Understood.
But since we're here, I may as well give it a few minutes, and I don't want to waste your times or his either. So I could tell you that my dad, he bought the place. He's been there since 1985, and the building is operating pretty much the way it's been operating since 85. There are 2 units in the building that were commercial, and he wasn't really aware that there was really a difference between commercial and residential. So he changed it. One of them was, I don't know if you will remember, but there was a radio station in the lower part, and up above there was some sort of like massage, midwifery type of something that was up there. And both of them wound up moving out somewhat recently. And yeah, that's the building. And I come up every weekend. He moved up here from Long Island. When I got old enough to move out of the house, he did, right? So he came up here with my mom and lived on, moved to Lake Sunapee. I'm going to say in 67, 66. I was only, a kid. And so they went there, and then they finally, he was working in the telephone company, and my mother was a nurse. And they wound up coming up here and getting the place in New London, and then getting a house around the corner of New London. And this was all they used to do. This was like they put everything into that, and I think that the same zoning back in '85 is the same zoning as it is now for that building. And none of us, certainly I didn't, but none of us knew that there was even such a thing as zoning. It was just, kind of take over what was already going. And now, like I said, the radio station has moved out, and the massage parlor's moved out, and then he calls on me to help him, get this place, take the carpets off the wall and turn it into a nice apartment, and then in doing that, he was like, oh, well, this is changing from commercial to residential, so he came down here to fill out some paperwork that I'm not sure what the paper's called, but I think it's a change of something, right?
Right. Change of use.
Change of use, right. So that opened up a can of worms. That is why we're standing here now, is because in filling out that, it's like, oh, hold on. The building is, there's a difference between residential and commercial. And the residential, and I can tell you, I'm a contractor from Long Island. The units are in great shape. We turned them into residential through a lot of sweat, but now they're in that place and they are unoccupied because, we'd like to get them occupied because this is his income. This is how, and I'll say this about my dad, without taking too much time. He is a very generous guy. He has, since he's moved up here, him and my mom would go regularly to Hitchcock Hospital to volunteer, pushing people around in wheelchairs that are younger than him. And that's just what he does. He's, and he would volunteer to do everybody's taxes because he was very good at doing taxes. And I, got to observe this over the years, and he's always been, like if you checked the rent that he charges to people there, you'd say, Melissa was like, whoa, this is like,
She said that to me, too, so yeah.
Yeah, it's like very, very, very low. And he doesn't, like I would say, Dad, it appears that you really should raise it. No, not raising the rent. This one is this way, this one is that way. She can't do this, she can't do that. It's like, okay, but you have to pay your own bills, and they're going up. And so anyway, this is him. This is who he is. He's, you might call him an old timer, but that's just the way he is, right? And so now, he's trying to figure out what it is that we're actually doing here. And like I say, I come here every weekend, whether or not anything is going on or not, because he's been very good to me. So now it's his turn. I've always felt my whole life I've had a net underneath me, and I think he deserves to feel that he's got a net underneath him. So no matter what the decision is, no matter what, I'll be here for him. So
I appreciate that. Permit me to say that we're here to try to help you find what the best thing to do with what you have there is, and be as close conformity with the ordinance as possible. If I may, if you would like to come and take a look at this was posted on the website later today, and I don't know if you've had a chance to see it. It is a drawing, an architectural drawing from the 1980s showing the plans, the floor plans of the 8 units in the building. And in order to help us understand what it is that exists in the building now without doing a site visit, if you could take a minute with your dad and Melissa and see if that, in your opinion, fairly represents what exists at the moment. You may even have put it up on the board.
It's a little easier to see that.
Okay, yeah, understood. That's fine. Exhibit A is what I've called that for the purposes of the record.
Okay, so on the second floor, there are 2 units.
Yep.
They seem to be reversed.
They may be upside down, I don't know.
But anyway, unit 3 is occupied by a lady I only know as Jody, and she's been there for a while, and she's actually a great painter, and we used her help in painting unit 4 and getting it up to speed.
Got it? Okay, so
And
that's,
so that is, right now 4 is unoccupied and ready for occupation, and 3 is got Jody living.
got it. Okay, how about this first floor?
Okay, again, it's flip-flopped.
You have to imagine, I think the road is at the top.
So for the record, then, Newport Road is at the top of the picture. Got it.
The front is at the top coming in. And so unit number 1 is, I don't remember the lady's name. It's a single lady. She's in there. She's been in there for a while. Unit number 2 is a man. I don't know his name either, but I know he's handicapped and he gets around with a walker. Number 5 is empty. We were renting it before we moved to Nana. We were renting it to a Sunapee rookie cop guy who was just right in there. And we were glad to have him in the building, and pulled me over once for speeding.
Oh, well.
It's like, hey, Baker, how you doing? So he's not there right now. He's removed himself to Sunapee. And Unit 6 is occupied by Michael, who is a friend of mine from Long Island. He's come up, he wants to move to New Hampshire. So
Cool.
while he's looking for housing, that's where he's staying.
All right. And then the basement has the old auto parts store.
So the basement, I actually spent about 6 weeks living in number 7 when I was half my age now. And the other unit 8 is occupied by it's occupied right now. There are 2 residents in there, and it used to be way back. It used to be like an auto parts, right? And then it switched over from auto parts to some sort of like gym thing, I think called Circle or something like that. Curves. Circle, curves.
There's a zoning reference to a planning board meeting in which they talk about curves and what they wanted to do, but yes.
Okay, and then and then if you kept moving forward, you have a big parking lot, which is it's not on there, but it's and then the backyard is abutted. The property
Somewhere.
on the back and on the side, I believe, is owned by New London Hospital, which you wouldn't even know that because of the thick woods on both sides.
Any further thing, you're welcome to keep that if you want, or I can take it, whatever. All right, thank you. I appreciate that description of the property. Permit me to say, though, that the zone in which that's in, which is a commercial zone, is limited to 4 residential units under the zoning ordinance, and has been consistently right along.
There is some speculation that it was allowed, that there's
Well,
5 allowed.
I'm not saying, the character of it, I think, I wouldn't be out of step if I said that the character of it presently is pre-existing non-conforming. As we look at it now, we see that, it's been used this way. The 1988 minutes reflect 5 units, residential units in there. That's in violation. I mean, it's not in violation. It's a pre-existing non-conforming use.
Right.
And now you're seeking to take and add another unit to an already pre-existing non-conforming situation. And the ordinance requires you to get a variance in order to do that.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's why we're here. It's not good or bad, it is what it is, and so that's why you're required to present evidence sufficient to sustain a finding on all 5 of the variance criteria. Yeah, so did you want to add anything? And anyone have any questions of, Stephen, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So the total number, if we give you the variance, you're going to have how many residential units total?
Right now, well, what we're seeking is 9, because that's
9.
That's what we have.
Okay.
It's 9.
And how many of those are 1 bedroom and how many?
All 1 bedroom.
All are 1 bedroom?
Yes.
Okay, and one of the reasons I ask is that my understanding of I had heard a number for rental that sounded quite low, and it sounded to me like what you have already is basically workforce housing, except I looked at the workforce housing statute, and it required, to qualify as workforce housing, you would have to have half of the dwelling units have at least 2 bedrooms, and so you don't.
Yeah, it's not technical enforce housing
understood.
for government standards, but it is one-bedroom units. Maximum rent is $1,000 plus utilities, although a few, all heat and hot water, water and sewer and trash are included, as well as outside maintenance. There are a few that have to cover their own electric right in the front, but it's pretty reasonable rental rates for properties around here.
And you know, if you look at our master plan and the work of the Housing Commission, we know New London needs housing like that. It's not a lot in the town, and we need a range of housing. And so, in my view, you know, that's going to help you on your public interest standard that we know from the master plan, and we know from a lot of other evidence that type of housing is of value in the town. And so when we get to the spirit of the ordinance, that's supportive, and in the substantial justice test, we would be considering the benefits of that kind of housing against whatever offsets there are, whatever negative effects there are on the public interest. And so, as I was looking at this, I was thinking, well, what exact negative effects are there? I mean, it's been used for multiple residential units and some commercial for a long time. It's in the roadway there is almost all commercial. There's very little mixed use, but as a matter of right, our commercial zone allows residential, so there's nothing wrong with it. And so, you know, I think that in looking at some other cases similar to this, there have been concerns about traffic patterns. I'm not sure that you're going to have any more traffic if we grant this variance than you would have had if it was a commercial unit. And in fact, your traffic at residential units arguably would be different times a day. So there's a lot of factors that I think we can take into account here that are going to help us.
Okay.
But one of my hesitancies is that I'm wondering if in fact the variance shouldn't be to grant you a variance on this requirement that half of the units have 2 bedrooms in order to qualify as workforce housing. I don't mean to send you off to the planning board then to get workforce housing approved. It's more complicated.
It does end up being more complicated, and we kind of opted not to because there's extra layers of paperwork and bureaucracy, so we opted just to kind of go this route. It is affordable housing, it's needed, it's 1 bedroom, and to make it 2 bedrooms, the apartment's 2 bedrooms, it's very difficult.
Sure.
And we even thought about trying to combine 2 units if we're not allowed to have 9, for example. Which 2 could we have? Which apartments could we make back to commercial space and take kitchens out? And it ends up being kind of complicated, so that, an apartment's going to have 2 kitchens, 2 bathrooms to have 2 bedrooms. So it ends up being kind of awkward.
Yeah. And if you did that and performed all that work at substantial cost, your rental would be substantially higher.
Yes.
So we in some ways, you lose some of the advantage of affordability in the housing.
And there's really a nice mix in there. I mean, there's some older ladies, there's, people with handicaps.
Melissa,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, can you just tilt the microphone? I don't think we're getting you.
There's a nice balance right now of people who are there, elderly people with handicaps. It's really just a nice balance, and we really, quite frankly, need that kind of housing. What else was I going to say? Did you want to say anything else?
No, any questions?
Yeah.
Any of the other board members have any questions is there anything you wanted to add, Melissa?
Oh, I did want to add this, and I'm sorry, I've kind of forgot. So we have been working with the fire department and town hall on ADT. So ADT has come in and put in fire alarms in every single unit. We also have an electrician coming in to go through and make sure that the building is 100% safe. So we have done everything that's required from the town when the fire chief kind of walked through, just to make sure that it was safe once we knew that we needed to do all these things. So it is prepped. Yeah, absolutely. I've been talking with Mike Matty. So, and I had an estimate from one electrician to look at the building, the whole building. It was $7,500 just to look at it. So I have a new person coming in tomorrow that will look at it for free and give us the estimate. So, and then I'll have that tomorrow. But I've been submitting all paperwork right with Mike Matty, and I've got the ADT paperwork here as well. We've been waiting to hear if all units would go through. Right now, we are town approved with ADT. If more units are allowed, then we'll have ADT go in and hook up 2 more units to make it fully functional. But we were holding off per fire chief until we had heard back from you.
And just so this is clear for everyone, if they're successful here getting a variance, their next stop will be the planning board for an approved site plan review when those sort of details are taken up. Chief Lyon and Lieutenant Matthew and myself met with them 2 weeks ago to go through all of those things preemptively so that if they get their variance, they're in good shape to hopefully move forward to the planning board sometime in the next month or two. And this is far back in the minutes from, I think it was 2003, it talked about the residential units being hooked up to the alarm and notification system.
We also reached out to Public Works on water and sewer. Water seems to be fine. There'd be no increase in water. And for sewer, they have to do an evaluation on the sewer pipe. The worst case scenario would be a larger sewer pipe would need to hook onto the town, but they really weren't sure that was going to be necessary, and that would be an owner expense. So that's just some of the research that we've done so far.
That's planning board issue, yeah.
Okay. Well, just so you know, we've tried to sort of know what's going on, but in terms of your language in the 5 criteria, I don't feel comfortable. I'm not sure that I quite understand the nature of the 5 criteria, and that's why I think we need a continuance just to make sure we understand it, to make sure we can go forward.
Understood. Before we, what is the word, release you, shall we say, do it. I know, Lauren, did you want to ask us?
Yeah.
Anything we can get on the record now,
Yeah.
you will get a copy of that, and you'll know what evidence has been presented, so when you come back the second time, we won't have to repeat it all.
Okay.
We'll have some findings of fact as a result of this hearing, which we won't need to repeat.
Yeah, because I think what I would find helpful is the current configuration. I find that difficult to understand.
That was correct.
Yeah, I still find it difficult to understand what's occupied, and then exactly when it went from the use that was non-conforming, and then the how it basically got to where it is now, and I guess what it is now. I'm still not sure that I'm following that. So current site plan.
Sorry, Lauren, I think as far back as '88, it was non-conforming.
Yes, I understand that.
Okay.
But it seems to me that the commercial use is now, and that could be answered, the commercial use is now non-existent and it's completely residential, is that correct?
No, yes and no. I mean, we've not actually rented a few of the properties because we're waiting to hear from the board here to whether or not that those are going to become office
But you
spaces
can
or
rent
not.
them because they're in residential.
Yeah, there was somebody who
Layout.
who we had to move in, and we gave them the deposit back because this was unsettled.
Yeah.
Yes.
But we could turn that into an office space.
Yes, but what I understand in the original, there's an auto parts store.
There was.
Yes, but it was a certain square footage, which is now, I understand, to be either 1 or 2 apartments.
I think it's 2. It's 7 and 8.
And when did that happen, that switched?
I'm going to say 15 years ago.
But you just went through the diagram on the board, Exhibit A, with me this
That
year. And did you not say that Unit 8, there was 2 people living in it?
It's actually one person, Donna.
Done.
It's just one person, correct?
Oh.
So maybe to Lauren's point, what we can do is, Melissa, if you want to come in, or we can take that plan to flash photo and have it copied for you, and then you can pick it up there and pay for it, and then perhaps just hand sort of notations over the units. Lauren, would that be helpful to, this is now a residential unit, to sort of help to lay out
Yeah, I think it would certainly be helpful to understand the exact use now, because I can understand what it perceived to be in the original use. And then to that point, I see that in the application, it said something about college students. Was it ever used as, because that seemed to be something.
There was never college students in it. It was always, there was curves, before it was curves, there was the auto parts, and then upstairs was the radio station, and then above was the midwifery place, massage place, and that was the only commercial that I'm aware of. I don't think that there was anything else in there.
Okay, yeah, that's in your application, so I would look at that.
I did think that there was college kids in there in the past, and they had, and now we're just looking to have it as just simple one-bedroom units, 9 of them. And we can go back
You
and
had
write.
college kids in there?
I thought so.
Yeah, clarify that on your
Yeah.
application if that was.
What's that? I thought so, yes. But we can write a history.
So,
I mean, I could,
The diagram looked correct to me from what you saw, and the diagram actually has the units listed that I saw. There was no college kids? Okay.
so this building was not non-conforming until we changed the zoning, which occurred when everything got reshifted around and,
I believe it was non-conforming in 88. At the time this drawing was done, it was non-conforming.
right,
Because it had 5
Remained to be
residential units
non-conforming
in
after
the
the change.
right, because it became non-conforming because of the change in the zoning. That's number one.
So it's
Number two,
yeah, pre-existing.
I'm not sure that when they, this is something I don't know. Is there a required amount of commercial use that has to be in that building versus, no. So that's another thing to think about. If one unit is converted back to commercial, where are we at? Thirdly, I'm not sure who owns it right now, but to ask them to try to apply for not low income, but workforce housing, there would not be the 30-year window for whoever the owner is currently. That's not even appropriate. The people that are there probably are not even making the minimum required to qualify for workforce housing. Isn't there a minimum
No,
window for workforce?
The test is the rental above a level that's minimum based on the median income. It's if a 3-person family were making the median income, is the rental more than 30% of 60% of that median income? So it doesn't matter if those people are making the money or not. It's just what is the level of rental that's tied to that. But we can get mired down in workforce housing, and I'm not partly at fault for bringing it up.
Shame on you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So can I just clarify? So
You may.
the building was conforming, and then in about 88, the zoning changed, and then it became non-conforming?
That
what
is,
happened?
that is Ann's representation of the matter, but I don't think any of the board members have done a thorough historical analysis of the use of this building from the time it was built in 1950. We only pick up at the time in 1980 when your father bought it, and we tried to look at the piecemeal notes from the planning board meetings and so on and so forth to try to figure out what's going on down there.
So the hardest part with legally non-conforming structures is that oftentimes there was not an original record of a site plan because it wasn't required when the use started. And so the furthest back site plan that we have evidence of is the 1988 plan here with the minutes that were included in your packet. That's not to say whether between 1950 and 1958, when zoning was adopted, if they established the original nonconformance then, perhaps the density between 1958 and 1988 at some time allowed more. As recently as 3 years ago, this would have even been even more nonconforming because we changed the density from 10,000 square feet per unit back to 5,000 where it stood for, a couple of decades previously. So things do change over time. The hardest part is that there's not usually a baseline plan for legally non-conforming structures.
But it's accurate to say that the 88 plan does not reflect what the building looks like now.
Correct. And also, if in the 1988 approvals, if it had been continued as it was presented, then they could potentially have 6 residential units now with the 2 commercial, because that's what was approved then. Over time, something changed and they dropped down to 5, which we saw the evidence of in the 2003 minutes with the curves application that came in. And so that's where the standing for the legal nonconforming of the 5 units is assumed to have been approved as part of that site plan and continued without interruption since then.
The point, I'm sorry.
Can you use the microphone, Conrad? Thank you.
Am I correct in assuming that it's a density level of no more than 21 family unit per 2,500 square feet of the lot?
5,000 square feet. And there's 23,000 square feet of land. So they're just shy of the land that they
Okay,
need for
so that's
5
why
units.
it was actually only 5 that would be, okay.
Yep.
4 rather. All right, and the parking requirement would be for 2 vehicles for each unit, right?
That is what the site plan review regulations state. If they are successful with this, they'll go to the planning board for that to be reviewed. It appears like they can meet that. If they couldn't meet that, they could request a waiver from the site plan regulations from the planning board.
Right now, there's not 18 space for 18 parking spots.
I thought on their plan showed
And that's based on what?
20.
Based on the submitted drawing that said 100 by 100 square, or 100 feet by 100 feet for that back parking lot.
In the 1988 drawing, it did have 20 spaces marked off, so it could
Right.
be expanded.
But they had,
Even though he's the one who plows the snow.
We don't know if that 20-space drawing accurately reflects what's on the ground.
yeah.
And then, again, that's for the planning board to parse out through the site plan review process, and so they'll have a site plan prepared for that. Most of the time, the applicants won't go to that level of expense until they know that they have the right to exercise the use to start with. Now, in conforming scenarios, we know that whether or not it's in the zoning ordinance, in these scenarios, it's important to get either an approval or a denial from you folks first, so that they then can, the planning board knows that they have the right to have 9 units to start the site plan review process.
I know that in the front, there's like room for like eight cars to park.
Yeah, and I know that'll block the view on that Newport Road. I know that will also block the view pulling in and out on Newport Road. I mean, there's been motorcycles there, et cetera, over the years when the radio station was there. But if you put regular cars there, you're either encroaching on the sidewalk and trying to back out onto Newport Road, which is, I don't think, the best thing.
Yeah. And I mean, he would probably know better because he's always, plowing the snow and stuff. But I've never seen, an issue with cars there. It's always been fairly sparse, really.
So,
Right now, I think there's 2 cars in the back and 1 car in front.
If I could interject on this, so these are 1-bedroom apartments. You're apt to have no more than 2 cars for each one, but I would guess in some cases you'd only have 1 person with 1 car.
or no
And a
cars.
few people
Or
with no
no.
cars.
No
Yeah,
cars.
there's people there. I think 2 people that live there have cars.
Okay.
Unless everybody else is just.
So to Adam's point, the site plan review will get into that. That doesn't mean we wouldn't, because, if you had no parking lot and you were asking us to add density, that would be trampling on a value of our zoning, and we have a balancing test of, is the harm to saying no to you greater than the benefit to the town? Personally, 100 by 100 parking lot, I don't think I'm going to get too tangled up on the lack of parking as
Parking
a
lot could be bigger.
public detriment.
I mean, the parking lot could be also expanded. When I measured that, I measured the asphalt.
Yeah.
You know, the property goes beyond the asphalt.
It seems to me also, though, if those were, you still had 2 commercial units, you'd be apt to have more cars pulling up to those.
You'd have traffic. Then you'd have traffic.
So that as a matter of the motion, the progress from 2 commercial units now to 2 residential, I'm just going to say, I don't think parking is going to be the public interest that is a problem here, so.
I would like to say I was one of the massage therapists. There were 3 of us up there, and numerous times we each had clients, and we had clients waiting, and parking was not an issue, and they mostly all parked in the front.
Okay, further questions by any of the board members, alternates or otherwise?
I just had a question more for Adam or more experienced board members. If we grant this variance, we seem to be in more conflict to the non-conforming article of the zoning code. So should there be another variance with that? This would make it even more non-conforming, which is violation to the Article XX.
Right, so you can't make it more non-conforming without a variance.
So would there be an additional variance? So maybe the application needs a bit more information.
Well, we don't know, if I understand your question correctly, they don't need a variance to use it as they're going to use it. It's already pre-existing non-conforming. So you've got 8 units in there, pre-existing non-conforming. Now, they want another one. Okay, well, guess what? That's increasing the non-conformity, so that's what this variance is about. But they've been getting along fine, operating as a pre-existing non-conforming with 8 units. That's how I see it. And the 9th is what causes them to come here.
So I thought they only had 5 units now, and so then we're adding a significant amount.
That's right. We
Yeah.
have 5.
Sorry.
Then the variance is for 3 more, or 4 more.
4.
Which makes it more non-conforming.
Which makes it
which is in
great deal more
violation to
Exactly,
that.
thank you. All right.
So if we grant a variance on one part and we violate the other part,
Well,
doesn't
right
that
now,
make
there's
it-
7 in there that are,
Well, it's the residential units that we are concerned about.
Correct. So
There's no restriction on commercial units. It's the residential units that the restriction applies to.
like, right now, there are 7 individuals living in there.
Right. Any additional unit that's used for residential purposes over and above the 5 that are pre-existing non-conforming at this point require a variance.
And I'm specifically talking about where it says any legal non-conforming use shall not be expanded.
Understood.
So,
Well, you're right.
Find something legal to do.
All right, Ann. Well, any other questions or comments by any of the board members?
I just have one,
Pull it right up.
and
Choke it.
just
That's it.
to kind of clarify or maybe expand on what Lauren was saying. So when you develop, it's like you're kind of telling a story, right? And so as you tell the story of these units changing over time, when you modify or annotate that site, the plan that Adam was talking about, if you could also just add like the square footage for each of the units, just so that all of the information about what you have today and what you're proposing to do, so that when we look at it and we see the whole timeline, we can actually get the full picture of what because you're talking, there's a lot of historical information here, and then you're talking about this one change. So if you could make sure that it all gets maybe captured on that site plan, that would be really helpful. So
I have a question. So the site plan that we saw was from 1988? That was a site plan from 1988?
These
And does it
drawings
specify-
were from 1980, correct?
1980,
Somewhere, yeah.
89, I think it was, but yes.
89, okay.
I think the
89 is correct.
planning board meeting happened at the very end of 88, and then the plans are dated 1989.
Right, and for the record, the planning board notes in 88 indicate that there's a lot of variability between what the schedule says for square footage and what actually is. It's very nebulous. They make that point, that they really are not sure what's going on down there.
Okay.
So I think Julia's point is well taken, and it would be helpful to us, I think, to get exactly,
So my question is, I mean, does it say on the site plan what the use was and what each unit was being used for on that plan?
There, as part of the minutes from that meeting,
it's got 8 units in there.
Yep.
And it says bedroom apartment for 6 of them, and then radio station office, and then auto parts store. But in the minutes, it suggests that they wanted to monkey around with that. It says they want units 4 and 5 will be converted to office space, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and so they really weren't sure what the dimensions of the finished product was supposed to look like. And even if they knew that then, it's changed from what you're proposing to us now. So her point, Julia's point is well taken. It'd be a good idea if we had a scale drawing of what exactly you propose to do down there.
Okay. And is it possible to get the information that's on the screen now? Because this is the first time I've seen this.
Yep.
So,
yep, it's in the property
Yeah,
files. We can copy those for you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Adam and I dug that out this afternoon, and you took a picture of it this morning, I think it was. You took a picture of it and posted it on the website, but you didn't have notice of that, and so that's perfectly understandable, and I apologize for that.
okay.
We're not trying to hide the ball.
No, it's fine. I've just never seen it, so I can't speak to it, but it would be helpful. I think when we go back through and remeasure everything, because I suspect it's going to be really similar to that. The auto parts store was probably 8 and 9 and part of the hallway is what I'm guessing. So, and we can kind of go from there, and that would be helpful for a starting point for us to measure.
Okay.
Could I, another question. One of the standards is whether granting the variance might diminish the value of neighbors' properties. And so in addressing that, if your next door neighbors, they're commercial businesses, if they have not had any historic complaints about residential uses so far, that would be useful for our record on that particular point.
I haven't known of it.
Right, that's part of the standard, that you have to put forth some evidence in some form to show that there would be no diminution in the property values of the surrounding properties.
One thing that is a standard procedure, and that is to get a short letter from a neighbor saying, we understand what is proposed and we think it's fine, we have no objection.
Okay. That's a great idea.
Okay.
Okay.
Michael, could I just loop back to Pete's comment real quick, just
May,
to
yes.
wrap up? So, and if anyone wants to turn, it's page 80, Article 20B4 that he was, or 5 rather, that he was referencing. But I don't think it comes into play here, because if a variance is granted, it's no longer a legally non-conforming property, it's a property with a variance. And so it sort of leaves one behind so that another variance for that wouldn't be applicable. Unless anyone disagrees, that's what I would advise for them to stick with the single variance application.
Okay, so the other question that I haven't heard any evidence one way or the other on is whether or not this proposed variance would fundamentally change the character of the neighborhood. I need some, if you don't address it now, you will want to address it when we meet again. Will this proposed change fundamentally alter the character of the neighborhood? You don't have to answer now, but that's something we're going to want to explore.
I mean, I would say no.
Yes, I will do that, and after I make this other
We can
comment
go back
about...
and
And of course, sitting here, I haven't heard any evidence, unless I missed something, I haven't heard any evidence on the question of hardship. I outlined the pieces of it when I first started speaking, and that is that it has nothing to do with the economic plight of the owner. It is the physical characteristics of the lot and the building that would cause the application of the ordinance as it is to deny you the reasonable use of your property. And may I point out, you've been reasonably using it in a non-conforming manner for nigh on 25 years, and so you're going to have to address that at some point.
Okay.
And I see some other folks in the gallery that don't appear to be related to the property owners. Do any of you have anything to add, or would you like to ask any questions of the board or the petitioners? And if so, please identify yourselves and step to the microphone and ask us what you'd like to know.
My name is Lori Underwood. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at New London Hospital, and I'm here to support and certainly we will provide a letter to them that our property will not be diminished by doing this. And I do have to say that this has been a property that has supported some of our employees, our lower paid employees of living in this property. And so they have been serving as a resource for this community in a housing area that is really difficult. And so we will work with the owners on anything that they need through this process.
Thank you so much. I understood there was some hospital employees living in there. Anyone else have anything to add or ask any questions? Yes, please, by all means, come and identify yourself and ask away.
Thank you. My name is Karen Epstein, and my question is, and it was alluded to briefly, so I just wanted to kind of pick up on that, and maybe it's even better addressed to Adam. What caught my eye when I just saw, this is my first time coming to one of your meetings, so it's been really nice to be here. What caught my eye in the paper was the description of the property going from a commercial district to a multifamily with 9 apartments. So I was just curious in terms of the water precinct having been approached, and are they aware of this, of the scope of the change? And is that something that is addressed at this point or addressed more in the planning board? So I just wanted to get some clarification on that. Thank you.
Right. So those conversations from the town's perspective typically happen during the planning board process. But I do think Melissa mentioned we've had those conversations with them and steered them to the water precinct. And they have had some conversations early on with them already. And my understanding, I'm seeing nodding heads, so I think this is still accurate, is that the water precinct is okay with the usage there. There's existing connections there for the apartments and for the commercial use. So the change in water, my understanding is very minimal. Obviously, there's a little bit of a different use for residential than commercial, but I think it's highly dependent on what the commercial use is. For example, I imagine Curves did a fair amount of laundry because they had towels and things like that. And so I know that they are in communication with the precinct and the town on the sewer side of things as well.
Adam, you say the sewer, it is connected to town sewer as well?
It is, and as part of the site plan review process, they may have to utilize Underwood engineers, the town sewer engineers, to determine if the connection size is still adequate today, because obviously the standards of when that sewer line was put in many decades ago may have changed, and that's the opportunity to look at that. So I think that is still left undetermined, correct? Yep.
Yeah, it's planning board. Any other comments or questions by any of the board members for our petitioners? Peter? Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Peter Nichols. I am a resident of New London, and I should tell you I'm also on the Housing Commission. I think many of you know. I am not speaking with the authority of the Housing Commission. The Housing Commission's responsibility is not to endorse projects, nor have we had a meeting to discuss this project if we were asked to. But I want to talk in favor of the project, the proposal, with some considerations. First of all, cutting through what we're trying to do, or what I think is the right thing to do, is to encourage the expansion of housing for people who need housing in New London. That's what the Housing Commission's responsibility is, but also what I feel in my heart as well is so important in our community. If we're trying to cut through this simply, it appears to me that the existing rental rate is conducive, supportive of the kind of housing that we need in our town. And so it's important that we not in any way encourage the results of this to be that the existing tenancy is asked to leave or can't afford an increase in rent, but more be retained as good tenants and good community members. So if we consider for a moment Member Root's proposal, it might be worth considering as a scenario to encourage the proposal to be under the workforce housing bylaw that we as a town and boards have worked so hard to adopt, except for the point that Member Root pointed out, which is the 2-bedroom requirement. So within that workforce housing bylaw, you may remember, is the allowance of an increase in density. It also allows for a maximum rent that can be charged, which is above the rents I understand are currently being charged, so we don't have a problem with that. So it may be that the simplest solution could be to consider it a variance as long as the proposal is done under the workforce housing bylaw that we've worked so hard to create. And if it doesn't work, I'd like to know what zoning changes we need to make it so it does work in the future. Thank you very much.
If I may, Peter, when you say waive the two-bedroom requirement and adopt the provisions of the workforce housing bylaw, you are implying that all of the annual paperwork to remain in compliance with the workforce housing statute would still have to be performed. That same administrative stuff that we heard earlier was a burden to the owners considering that straight away. I just want to make sure I understand how you propose to see this working.
Yes, as I understand it, I'm not an attorney, but as I understand it, the public benefit of the longevity of the workforce housing, which would succeed future ownership, because it's a covenant that runs with the property.
Understood.
That detriment to the current owner or future owner would be in exchange for the public benefit of this remaining as workforce housing for a longer period of time.
Okay, so by doing this, you are in effect imposing those administrative requirements on the owners, whoever they may be for the period of the term, 30-year term.
That's the way it would work.
Understood.
As a detriment to the owner, that's correct.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that was clear.
If I could respond real quickly, I was curious why there was a requirement in our workforce housing ordinance that half of the dwelling units in a workforce housing project have 2 bedrooms, and it's tied to the statute, which included that. I have some insight into how the statutes are written, and who knows why that's there. But it would be a small thing to actually grant the variance so that it could proceed as workforce housing, because it would be the first workforce housing project that got through the town. I'm not sure how much the paperwork is on an annual basis, if it's really that onerous. My sense was it's just the workforce housing ordinance itself is a little bit complicated, and so wrapping our heads around that would take more work up front. But Adam, is the annual paperwork really that onerous if your rents are actually low?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say because we've never had somebody exercise it. However, it typically requires hiring a third-party administrator who has the ability to review the tenant's taxes and all sorts of other documents that they still comply with the situation. I'm just sort of flipping through again quickly. The density, I don't believe that the density that's allowable in workforce housing would get them where they want to be without us granting a variance also to that, obviously. At the 10 units of garden style per acre of net tract area with 0.55 acres, if we rounded, which I forget where the rounding is in here, we actually speak to that.
It's rounded up, correct?
So we'd get them to 6 units that way. And then the waiver section tells us that we can't grant, the planning board shall not consider waivers to allow a density increase. So I think we would still be getting the variance from
You'd get 6 max, yes?
Right, we'd still be here looking for a variance for 3 more units. The trade-off would be there might be the 30-year compliance of the rent. As far as what the fees involved are to hire a third party, I don't know that information now.
And what would be the effect of all that, supposing it all happened on the existing tenants? Would they all qualify and be able to remain there?
So this is very anecdotal that I know about one other property that was converted. And unfortunately, it resulted in some of the tenants having to leave because they either didn't qualify because they had access to some family asset or something, or they were delinquent in filing their annual taxes, and they didn't have the documentation required to provide.
So in as much as we hear you, Peter, we want to see if, we want to explore this option. But I can't speak, and I don't know if it's possible. I just see more complications, but we're happy to examine it. I mean,
Understood. Now's the time to examine this kind of thing, because if this workforce housing bylaw doesn't work, we need to change it.
yeah, understood.
And thank you for your support in considering it.
No, you're welcome. Okay, further comments, questions by board members or members of the public?
I do want to clarify, excuse me, we're not asking them to go forward trying to incorporate workforce housing in their application at this time. Is that correct?
That's right.
Right. I think that would totally be their prerogative. They're asking for a
Correct.
variance on the
Correct.
density of the commercial
That's
zone.
not part of our,
It's just, we're going to go with this just a straight variance. We think it'd be easier long-term, but our goal is very similar to workforce housing, but without the cumbersome paperwork.
correct.
So it would be workforce housing without the capital W, as we say.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
If I could wrap this up, yeah. Adam pointing out that you would need a variance even to do workforce housing persuades me that you're better off not. Given the character of the building and the size of the units, they're going to be affordable units regardless. And so I'm not sure we need a 30-year commitment to keep them affordable. They'll keep themselves affordable, so.
Okay. All right, so in retrospect then, I think we would not be out of line if we were to interpret your position to be you would want to continue this matter to a date certain?
Correct.
When you could come back and give us the full presentation on all 5 of the criteria?
Correct.
Particularly the hardship one, by someone qualified to make that presentation? I'm not suggesting you aren't, but I think this is the first time I've seen you before the board, so I'm not, you know, it's just going to take some work.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm not, don't mean to dissuade you. This is a public forum. Anyone's welcome to make the presentation. But we have, on occasion, invited people to continue the matter and return with more homework, and the outcome has usually been favorable. So we just don't have the information we need right now to render a decision. Am I in agreement? Yes, Stephen?
I just wanted to add one more thing. I had been looking to see if there were some cases at the Housing Appeals Board that dealt with similar issues, because it's informative. And one of the things I will say is that the 5 standards, if they seem kind of hard to get your head around, it's because they are. They're fuzzy, and they get treated in different ways in different cases. But I wanted to suggest that our members and others should look at Chelmsford Hooksett Properties, LLC versus Town of Hooksett, the Housing Appeals Board, that involved an existing building that had been commercial, that the proposal was to convert it to residential, and the building itself, which was older and no longer being used for commercial purposes, was the aspect of the property that made it significantly different from other properties, and led the Housing Appeals Board to conclude that a substantial hardship, unnecessary hardship, would exist. So we can take a look at that.
If you could get us the site, Stephen, or
Yeah.
or the exact name, send it out, and we'll get it all, and then we'll take a look, take a read.
Steve and I
Thank you.
can connect
appreciate that.
tomorrow and get that sent out to everybody, and we'll get it to the applicants. And
Yep. So, if there's nothing further, the chair would entertain a motion to continue this hearing to a date certain, and would turn to the zoning administrator for that date.
so the July
It's been
2nd.
moved, seconded, that we do that. We have a date certain.
So July 2nd is the next meeting that we would be taking more applications for. Do you think that that is doable? Do you have counsel or someone that you work with that you have a relationship already with that you think?
Okay, we'll aim for it, but we don't have counsel, so I may be calling you tomorrow and emailing and asking who you recommend.
So we don't typically recommend for the, we don't. I would say, there's a pretty good variety of attorneys in town, and
The next
any
date
number of them.
being, the next date being when?
So the next date being the 2nd of July, rather, and then if that is not doable, it would be the 16th of July, 2 weeks
Okay.
after that.
So do you have a choice between the 2nd or the 16th of July?
We'd like the second.
Second.
The 2nd of July?
Second.
Okay. All right, so the motion is to continue this matter to a date certain of July 2nd, 2024 at 6:30 PM at this venue. I presume it would be at the Whipple venue.
Well, let me just double check the town calendar. It should be reserved for us, but
This is the default venue for zoning hearings, but sometimes they double book and we have to go to the Cougar Learning Center as an alternate venue.
yep, we should be good here.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion as stated, do you want me to restate it? Are we all clear on what it was? Continue to July 2nd, 6:30 here. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. Your petition is continued to July 2nd with the guidance that we've given you on record, and you will be getting, we're going to have this transcribed. I presume the minutes will be transcribed and be available, and then you'll have everything that we talked about.
They won't be transcribed. The meeting video will be posted to the website, and then summarized minutes will be
Got
produced,
it.
but it won't be a transcription.
Thank you, I appreciate that. That's all, thank you very much, everyone.
And
Now,
just-
we need to approve some minutes.
Michael, real quick, sorry. So if you're not able to make it work for the second, you'll just need to communicate that to me, and then likely, if we don't have any other applications on our agenda, we'll get a quorum of the board essentially to just show up to vote to continue to the next meeting, so that we don't have to produce additional public hearing notices. But hopefully the second works.
Okay, folks, if I can find my agenda, we have minutes from the previous session that were handed out. Thank you very much, Ann. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes of December 5th?
Yes.
Does anyone have any, in the absence of our esteemed minute reviewer, Catherine Fisher, who I miss dearly, does anyone have any corrections to these minutes? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion to approve them as written.
So moved.
Seconded?
I'll second it.
Seconded. All those in favor? Is there discussion of the minutes in any form? No? Not seeing any? Ready for the vote. All those in favor of adopting the minutes as printed signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. The minutes are approved. Is there any other business that anybody have any comments about anything else that we talked about tonight, or any other thing other than the welcoming of our new member? She'll have
On
to
that-
run the gauntlet when we get outdoors.
Well,
Okay.
Michael, on that note, I thought for Julia's benefit, it might be nice if we just went down the line and everyone sort of gave her a little bit of their background, and she could do that for everyone else too, just to sort of do introductions.
Sounds fine to me. Who's first?
Conrad,
Conrad's at the end.
speak in the mic.
Turn the microphone on, tell us about yourself.
Actually, I think you
You
know
guys-
about me because we sat beside
Officials are
each other
excused if you don't-
accidentally
Yeah.
at the town meeting. So, do you need to know anything else?
Yeah, my name is Peter Thoreau. I work as a landscape architect in town. I have a wife and 2 kids. I've been on the zoning board for a year and a half or so.
And before that?
Before, I grew up in New London. I moved away in college and graduate school to New Mexico for about 15 years. Worked there as a landscape architect, had my own business. Then we moved back here in 2018 to be closer to family, and that's where I am now.
You saw the light. Thank you, Peter.
Lauren Snow Chadwick. I'm a staff attorney for the Teachers Union. I have 2 small boys. I live in New London. Similar to Peter, I was in Colorado after law school and then came back here because I need my parents to parent my children. And yeah, that's me.
Turn Turn it on, Adam.
I turned off. Hi, Steve Root. I'm a lawyer. I've lived here since 1988. My wife is Karen Ebel, the state representative for the town, for which I'm justly famous.
Rightfully so.
Yeah, I've been on the ZBA, I don't know, since it was 4 or 5 years, but I was an alternate. One of the things that Michael stressed and that's really good about this board is that alternates participate just as much as the members and shape our decisions. So anyway, welcome, Julia.
We've already met.
Who are you?
Oh, rubbish. Get on with it.
I'm Ann Bedard. I have no idea how long I've been on this board, which means that's too long. I've lived in town permanently since '71, so I've seen a whole lot of changes. When I came to town, that building was yellow. It's still yellow. Still looks about the same, but the inside has been improved, trust me. And nothing was at that end of town. There was none of that shopping center there at the time. So it was a big brouhaha when that all came to town.
Yeah, the cool thing is, though, you should go down to the archives in the basement of the town hall. They have some great photographs of early New London, and that reminded me of that.
I'm not early New London.
I'm Heidi Lauritsen, and I've lived here for a long time. And my husband and I had a business for 45 years, which we just sold last year to one of our employees. And I go back as far as when 89 did not go all the way to Dartmouth. And I think I went to Colby Junior and then went to BU, and I think I was one of the first Colby students that stopped the bus because I had to go to the bathroom, and there was no place on 89 to go. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
The woods.
All right, my name is Julia Laments. I am an attorney. I have lived in New London for 7.5 months. I moved from New York City, most recently, 20-ish years there in Manhattan, but I grew up in the Midwest. So, and I am looking forward to serving on the board versus representing a board or appearing in front of a board or suing a board or...
Vermont,
Okay, no
Vermont
suing.
Law School, am I mistaken? Vermont Law?
I have an LLM from Vermont Law School
Yep.
in environmental law, and I also have my law degree is from the University of Iowa, and I also have a master's of public health in environmental health and disaster management from Tulane. So
You teach at the college, yes?
I taught at the college.
Taught at the
I taught as an adjunct. I taught every other year. They do an environmental law and policy class. So the associate dean lives around the corner from me, and so we just were walking dogs and started talking, and she asked me if I wanted to apply, and I did, and I interviewed, and so I did that. That was very fun. So I've taught law school at several. I taught at Rutgers University School of Law in Newark, as well as Vermont Law School. So I've done a lot of different things. So yeah.
My son-in-law graduated from law.
Nice.
I have a question.
Conrad.
Would you be willing to provide a slideshow of Uzbekistan later this year?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I'm going to Uzbekistan on Friday, so for 2 weeks, yeah. So, yes, I will take some photos. Anyone who cares to see about treasures from the Silk Road, I'd be more than happy. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and I appreciate it. It's been a while since we met. I was a little rusty after yesterday today, trying to get busy on all this, but thank you all. You have a great board. I'm proud of everybody. Yeah. Move to adjourn. So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Very nice.
Done.